Hello, hello. My name is April Malone with Yes, I Work From Home, and this is the podcast. Today I have Mark Asquith with me from the UK. Mark is the owner, I think, of Captivate FM, which is actually the podcast hosting service that I use. Mark, take it away. Go ahead and tell us where you're at and how things are going.
Well, thanks for having me, April. Yeah, as you say, I'm the founder and the CEO of Captivate. We're a podcast hosting, distribution, and monetization platform, which is fun in the UK, as you know. And yeah, just, been doing this, working at home like for a while. Probably like on and off for the last, how old am I? The last 18 years, which is kind of terrifying. Maybe not. Maybe the last 17 years, maybe the last 16, 17 years since I started working for myself. And always found it sort of interesting. And then obviously with the pandemic and so on, and being in software as well. I didn't always work in software, but I used to do a lot of working at home when I was like learning how to build stuff. So it's been a bit of a weird journey, but yeah, this is what I pretty much do full time now, which is kind of nice.
So let's go ahead and address the fact that you were off camera today for the people who are watching the video version of the episode. What's going on?
Oh, yeah. Well, it's one of the working from home perils. I get a text from my internet provider earlier saying we're doing essential works in the area, which basically means you're going to have really sporadic internet all day. And it's a nightmare, isn't it? It's just a nightmare. It really is one of the biggest kind of frustrations in this working at home journey, like lockdown. When that hit last year, we had Sam and I, we were obviously living in the same place, working on the same stuff. And the internet was just terrible. And I didn't realize it was because my house had just a load of stone walls, like brick walls. So it was like stress, ultimate stress, like the internet not working. And we bought a bit of a Wi-Fi mesh system, which instantly cured it. And it's just such a huge thing. Like, I don't think you realize how much of a deal it is. So yeah, that's what we're struggling with today as well, which is always fun.
Yeah, I've been there. I have worked on and off, for different kinds of companies. I worked for Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, a big health company. And I was, back then, like 10, 11, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I guess, internet wasn't as fast as it is. We were working off of like 50 and now I'm at like 1,000 and I still struggle, I'm saying numbers, but I'm not saying like, help me. What is the speed? What is the measurement for speed? Is it?
Yeah, like megabytes. Yeah.
Megabytes. I wanted to say it right. Yeah. And I guess, we just keep, pushing the limits because back then we weren't on video conferencing calls, it was just typing and, submitting documents. And now, I've been teaching kids in China and, singing a song with kids on the other side of the planet, trying to sync that is, really pushing the limits too. So but yeah, sometimes the companies have been more forgiving than others. Obviously, if you're working for yourself, you can just be like, hey, it is what it is. But some of the companies would be like, they wouldn't approve it. If I had an internet outage, I would be hotspotting and all the things. But, battery backup. One time my power went out and all of the networks, all of the Wi-Fi for all of the people in the neighborhood went down. But I had a battery backup and I was like the only person that was still able to use it. But as soon as I start messing with the actual internet updates and upgrades or whatever, that's a mess.
Oh, it's a nightmare. It really is a nightmare. It's like you say, especially working at home, you realize how much you totally rely on it. And I think because of everything that's gone on with the pandemic and so on, there's so much more video stuff going on. As opposed to before where, it was very much consumption. Even when we weren't consuming, we were doing far less video calls than we are now. So yeah, it has been a challenge, that's for sure. It has been a challenge, and I think it's certainly a concession that has to be made for that. Regardless, I think that's like it's one of the pieces that employers have just got to be very understanding about. I think it's a tough one.
And colleagues, and
clients,
like we've all been there. So hopefully, people are, if you've experienced, you understand. But you kind of feel like, oh my goodness, I'm trying to get to an interview, like a job interview. And it's like my car broke down and I'm trying to get across town. And I feel the same way, like internet is kind of like a transportation in some ways.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it? I mean, it allows you to do all it allows you to do what we're doing now. You know, it enables everything so much. But like you said, we're pushing the boundaries of it so much. And I think it's a difficult thing, especially when you consider like employers and employees that were thrust into having to work at home. You know, the requirement to have decent internet is potentially an expense that people just didn't have before, you know, which is kind of weird to think about because you always assume that people have just got decent internet, but, you know, not everyone has. There's no reason.
They might just have their phone.
Yeah, just tether up. Yeah, I agree.
Hey, let's talk about Captivate. I have talked about this in the past that I went on this big quest trying to figure out the best host for my podcast. And I thought it was going to be like a 20-minute decision. I had seen people recommend this or that, the other thing. And I thought I was going to just be like, oh, I'll just pick what, you know, some guru had recommended. And then I started looking into it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to quickly max out. You know, if they're only doing, you know, 30 minutes a month, you know, for that $10 a month plan or whatever it is, I'm going to blow right past that because I'm talking for an hour every week, twice. I do 2 interviews most of the time. And so we're talking at least 8 hours a month. And so yours kind of like rose to the top as I started comparing all the things, especially with getting me linked up with all of the Spotify and Apple podcasts and Amazon podcasts. It just seemed like yours was going to be the most user-friendly and I needed the most user-friendly, but you're kind of the new kid on the block. And I don't think that everybody has heard of Captivate yet. I actually didn't realize until we scheduled this interview that you were in the UK. So why don't you talk about your journey with Captivate and then how you got to Captivate?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for choosing it. And you know, that validates the mission. You know, that's why we exist. So Captivate's, you know, a couple of years old, just about. But actually we've been doing podcast hosting since about 2014.
Okay.
And we did it for a very specific subset of users. So my background was I've worked for myself for a long time in building things and coding things and then, you know, building digital agencies out and so on. And I've just, you know, I've been around a bit. And I used to run a digital and design agency. So we build like software for corporates, or we build like, you know, we build education platforms for education companies. And so like we were a software house and a excuse me, and a digital house and a branding company. And I got into podcasting, and we used to do sort of any website that we did, we'd always do it on WordPress. So I got into podcasting in about 2012, 2011. Did it for a couple of years. Like
back then.
Well, you think that, but not really. It had still been around since 2005. It's just, you know, it's just because of what we talked about, internet speeds, and everyone's been educated that you can get everything on demand now. You know, it took the revolution in Netflix, it took the revolution in Uber, it took the revolution in Deliveroo and Just Eat and Uber Eats and all of these things that you can just get instantly. It took that app revolution for podcasts to become more widely understood as, oh, wait a sec, it's on-demand audio, you know, because it just that concept, on-demand anything, up until about 2011 just didn't exist. Yeah. So I then quickly kind of created a WordPress platform with Kieran, who's my co-founder. And we did some kind of affiliate work with John from EO Fire, who's a good mate, and you know, did a lot of good work together with him. We created this podcast website platform, and on the back end of that, we actually did hosting. So what we'd do is we'd host people's websites, we'd kind of manage them and maintain them for a monthly fee, and part of that would be you get podcast hosting included, which was fine. It was good.
You were linked in with someone else or your own podcast hosting?
No, our own. We built it. Yeah. We used to use a plugin that was an open source plugin by another company to generate the feeds, but we did the hosting, we did the analytics, we built it all out. That's what I mean. In like 2013, 2014, we built that. You know, we were doing private podcasting back then. We were doing all sorts of stuff that people are now kind of, you know, on top of. And then it got to, well, a few things started to happen, actually. People said, I've got a website, but I want you guys' level of service, because we always put a real focus on just personality and service. And like, I've been in the industry now for nearly 10 years. I've been around podcasting. I've been speaking at conferences since about 2013, 2014. And I got to know everyone in podcasting pretty much that there is to know. I got to know really early. And people said, look, we want your level of service, but we've got our own, you know, we've already got our website, so we don't need that part of it. I said, well, you know, all right. So we created Captivate. And we did that, with the user in mind, with you, the podcaster, with growth in mind, and just, keep doubling down on that, keep improving it, keep doing more and more for the podcaster. So, the platform, the brand is a couple of years old, but I mean, like I said, we've been hosting for a while, a long time. And we still run that business, that web business that we've got. We still run that. That's still a good, profitable company. We've still got Lester that runs it. And I suppose that's the journey.
You've thrown out a few names. So you've mentioned your partner and you've also mentioned Sam. So how many people are on your team right now?
Captivate has 10 people. Yeah, we've got 10 people. We've got a few developers. We've got some support staff. Not all of them are full-time. Not all, we've got some contractors that work part-time that cover some support hours for us. So we've got 10 people, but like I said, not all of them are full-time. And we still do support. Kieran and I still do support. That was how we've built a few businesses, and everyone that we've built has been, we build it and then we do the support for it. And then we recruit in the support team first to make sure the experience is great. And then we build the bigger team around it. So it works nicely. It works nicely, to be honest. And we start.
I love hearing this because actually the last couple that I just interviewed, it was a husband and wife team, and they sell SEO marketing. Mm-hmm. And they just said, I think they also have about the same size team, around 10 people, including themselves and their employees. And they're like, we work with big brands, and we're finding out that a lot of them are actually still a small team or started off as just like a couple, that grew something. And I was a little surprised. I actually just reached out to you. I was like, so Mark, I've been using your podcast hosting. Do you actually work from home? Would you be interested in interviewing with me if you do? And I was surprised to hear back from you. Do you have like a brick and mortar office anywhere, or are you running everything out of your home offices collectively as a team?
Yeah, so we do have a bricks and mortar place down in Sheffield, which we're actually considering what we do with that. So we've got a podcast recording studio there. We've got a full bricks and mortar office, and we've had that for a long time. We used to go in there 3 or 4 days a week, and mm-hmm. we'd work at home 1 or 2 days a week. And obviously that switched with the pandemic. So we're actually quite literally, as we speak, in the midst of deciding whether or not we keep that building or not.
You were not the first person to tell me this, No,
I think it's understandable. I mean,
home. Yeah,
it does make sense. I mean, the challenge for us is it's always great to get people together, and developers enjoy working together. But the flexibility and quality of co-working spaces is completely fine. There's nothing problematic about sticking a laptop, maybe an extra spare monitor in the bag, and co-working somewhere.
But you wouldn't have your podcast recording studios there. Are you bringing those into your homes right now?
Well, I don't need it. I mean, I sound all right now on this interview.
Of course.
And I can do this. I can do a welcome to my show. I can do all that stuff. Okay. And it's all here. The microphones are quality, and we used to let the studio out. Like, we used to hire the studio out to people that wanted to record, but we stopped doing that again because of COVID. And frankly, it's the management of it. We're running a busy software company, and you don't want to be going down to reception to get someone for a recording studio and make sure they know what's going on. It's just not worth it. So we only use it for our own YouTube stuff, which again, I've got a decent setup at home. I've got all the lighting. I've got a nice Canon camera with a good Sigma lens on it. It will not look better in a studio. So it's a funny old situation, So I think we're certainly toying with the idea now. What do we do? What do we do?
Well, that's something that's come up a few times, is that it seemed to be in the past that if you worked from home, it was something less. And when you finally achieved, having a storefront office, you have arrived. And I think that's getting flipped on its head right now.
Yeah, I agree. It is a very, very funny scenario with that, because you find yourself like you said, that legitimacy. It's always great when you've got the legitimacy of an office space. And we've had office space for such a long time. Like in the town that we used to live in, town called Barnsley, we had the agency that we had like 8-9 people. We used to work with like brands all over the world. We had a printing company there. We had a photography studio there. And we rented that building. And it was funny because when that building came up for sale, we almost bought it. Kieran and I almost bought it, and we were going to turn it into a co-working space because I just thought it would work really nicely. We didn't, because I was away for a couple of months in the US for podcasting stuff, and the timing, just didn't work out. And it was always something that I thought was interesting. Like, to own a building is wonderful from an investment perspective. But then you're right, from a legitimacy perspective, like when Kieran and I, we left the agency and we kind of closed the agency down and got out of the agency game and went fully into podcasting. The first thing that we did was get an office right in the centre of Sheffield, which is, Barnes is a town where we lived, and Sheffield is a city, which is the nearest city to us. And it was great. It felt great to be getting on a train or driving in and being around, go to the bars and all that sort of stuff. Like, that was great. But it was also sort of, well, what's the point? After a couple of years, there was no reason for us to have it. We just wanted it. So when COVID hit, and in particular, like Sam and I, we moved out a little bit further. So for me to commute into the office is about 50 minutes, which is not bad. You stick a bit of music on, a bit of a podcast or a book, and off you go. But you got your quality of life back. But then at the same time, like, no one has ever thought that Captivate wasn't a legitimate company because we don't go, look, here's our office on Twitter. But then also on the flip side of that, we have enjoyed going back in once a week or twice a week, because you get, you can nip for a drink after work. You can go and get some whatever, like we like sushi at lunchtime, just nip and get a sushi up at lunchtime. So it's funny because it's such a balancing act. Just having that balance, I think, is vital. So, like I said at the minute, we're considering how do you achieve that without spending thousands and thousands and thousands per year on office space. It's that balance.
It makes me wonder, like, I'm sure that every industry has that different sweet spot where you're like, we only really need to see each other once a week or even once a month. And I guess you're going to have that whole mix of the extroverts and the introverts. And I don't know if software engineers, exactly where they fall into that mix stereotypically. But I know my husband would probably be content to only have to go into the office once a week. Mm-hmm. Currently, he's home, 5 days a week, but in the future, they're hoping to have them in the office 3 days a week and 2 days at home. And there wasn't much input, as far as what they actually get to pick. But for you, what would be that sweet spot?
Well, I think it depends on the person. I don't think there needs to be a remit of when we go in and when we don't. Like, for me, it's once a week, twice a week, because I really love being in the office. I really, really do. But at the same time, like, I love, we're fortunate enough to have a decent sized garden at home. And, like, for example, today I can spend, this morning, the weather was nice. I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm not really getting much done here. My concentration is not there. I'll spend 30 minutes, cut the grass, or, do a little. Nice. So you get a little bit of that kind of balance. So I'm not entirely sure there's a sweet spot that suits everyone, but for me, is that once a week. Mm-hmm. And just to top up on the social goodness. And, I think it's different when you're coming out of lockdown as well, because you've been subdued socially for such a long time that any social contact, like, even if it's just half a pint after work or whatever,
it feels like a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it tops your willpower up. It's like when you have a good night out, and you can, you might only have a night out now and again, but that's all right. You'll have the night out, and that tops you up. You don't need another one for a few weeks or a few months or whatever your tolerance is. So it's the same thing. It tops you up. So for me, that's once a week. I wouldn't want to make more of a commute than once a week. But it'd be nice. It's nice to have the option.
Right. If you let go of your building, are there co-working spaces that you would consider, or even like, a conference room in some hotel or restaurant?
Yeah, we'd probably there's plenty of co-working spaces. Absolutely. Lots of good spaces. Yeah. It would be one of those, you just go down, dump your laptop. And I've worked in those places before. I was pretty nomadic for a while for the last, in fact, from about 2015 until, COVID hit. Sam and I were in San Diego, we'd been in LA, we'd been in New York, and a few other places, just working, doing podcast stuff. We were out there for nearly 3 months. And that was all coffee shops and co-working spaces and all sorts of different things. So yeah, it would just be that scenario, I don't see much wrong with that.
Were you networking with other podcasting people, or were you actually like literally recording podcasts in these kind of like busy environments? I'm in a closet right now, so I'm like trying to be all quiet and tell my family to be quiet.
No, I mean, it's a funny one. So yes, I was still recording. I'm fortunate enough to work in podcasting, so I've got all sorts of different podcasting rigs and things that I can take around somewhere. So I was recording on like a Zoom H6. I've got a P4 now that I use. And I was recording on the Zoom H6, and I had a couple of microphones that if I needed to do interviews, which I rarely do, but if I did, I had them, and I'd just record myself. And I would also, I've got a microphone that I can just USB straight into Audition in my laptop. So my worst case is take a laptop and a USB mic, and it will sound almost this good. The difference with me is that I've probably got, I've done 1,300 episodes of podcasts. I've done a few of them. So I'm probably a little different to a lot of podcasters. So I'll just launch in with, look, it's going to be noisy if you hear a dog barking. I can't stop the dog barking.
Hey.
So it's people. I think for me, tune into my brand a little bit for that, because I've always been a little bit like that. But if you're listening to, if you're recording a narrative podcast and it's all voice acting and the soundboards and the production, like that's not going to wash. For me, it's a very different thing. So right. Yeah, we were doing that. We recorded in all sorts of places. I've recorded on conference floors. I've recorded, we were stayed in the Hollywood Hills while we were in LA and just recorded there on the balcony with the birds and the, all the wildlife there, and like Beechwood Cafe, we've done recordings there. Just all these random places where you find yourself staying and you got a microphone, and I've still got to get an episode out. So, yeah, I've done all sorts of weird stuff like that, and it's always fine.
And I'm sure that the microphone makes it or breaks it too. I ended up with this Blue Yeti, which I have said multiple times. As soon as I came home from the store with it, I was like, oh, there's so many other choices I could have gone with that would have probably been better. The directional ones that, will cut out everything else. This kind of catches a lot of the sound from the room. Mm-hmm. So I have to be a lot more careful, but I'm also not ready to upgrade. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny. I mean, if you look at like how things have developed, things like the ATR 2100, like that's $100. Look at things like now the Rode Pod mic. They're all, that things have just developed so quickly in podcasting. Like there are even hardware devices for recording that didn't exist a year ago, like the P4 or the L8 or some of the new sort of more mobile Rode stuff that are coming out. And, you've got to just pick something and stick with. This microphone that I've got now that I'm just going to tap, that one is, I can move away from it and it'll sound, it's a really good mic. And I have quite literally not changed this since I started a podcast. I've had this since about 2012.
Okay.
And just never changed it. I've
got
some more. No, well, the irony is there's 8 Heil PR40s, $450 microphones at the studio, and I still use this one because it sounds better for my voice and it does the same stuff. So I think it's just about find that quality and then, upgrading your microphone. It's not going to do that much for your show. Yours sounds great. Why would you change it? It works.
As long as I'm in a quiet closet, it works. So
exactly. Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about your own podcasting. What kind of stuff are you doing? Like you are not only running a podcast hosting business, but you're also podcasting about podcasting or about everything?
Yeah, about podcasting. Yeah, I run a show called the Podcast Accelerator. It's just teaches busy podcasters how to grow their audience in really actionable ways. So it used to be a short form show, and I've just very recently changed that to a once a week long form show. I've gone back to being longer form. So it's pretty much deep dives into, podcast marketing concepts or podcast growth concepts or concepts around the idea of being a working podcaster, a little bit like what Evo does. And really just kind of give people ways to improve their podcast, but not from an audio perspective. Like I'm not an audiophile. I'm a let's get better numbers guy. So yeah,
I could probably learn a lot from that. Is it a paid podcast or is it public?
No, it's all free. Yeah, everything's all free. So it's the Podcast Accelerator. Just, if you go to markasquith.com/listen, that's the single subscription link for it. And you can you can get it. I do that all the time. I've got a Star Wars podcast that I talk about Star Wars on, and another few that I want to do as well, inevitably. I get my hosting for free, which is kind of handy. So I can create as many as I want.
So Star Wars, and what else?
Oh, there's loads that I want to do, like loads of nerdy ones that I want to do, but I don't get time at the minute. I'm going to do, there's probably another 2 podcast industry podcasts that I'm going to do very shortly. And probably the Star Wars one. I might do another geek one, might like a bit of a nerdy one, but I've not decided yet. It's just too much time cutting the grass, you know?
Oh man. I mean, how many hours would you be behind a mic? When you say that you were switching from the short form into the long form, about how many minutes long were your short form and how many minutes long are the long form ones?
So I used to do about 10 minutes top end on the short form, and now I probably do somewhere between 25 and 35 minutes an episode. Because
so mine is like 45 minutes to an hour and 15. What would you call that?
Oh, I think that's still long form. Yours is very different though, because it's interview. Mine's all solo stuff. So mine is, I'm literally, talking non-stop for 30 minutes, which is, I can do that pretty easily, to be fair. But, it's
me too.
It's easy done. I mean, that's why we're in podcasting.
I would say that like maybe every 7 to 10 episodes, I'll do a solo, and they range from 45 minutes to, I think I've talked an hour and 10 minutes by myself. Mm-hmm. I find that I talk faster when I'm just talking by myself. And that's one thing that I'll have to work on is my pacing. Yeah. Any other podcasting tips that you'd like to throw out there while I've got you on the spot, and we can dive into a little bit more of your home office life here in a few minutes?
No, not really. I think, there's plenty of content. There's plenty of content out there on that one. Yeah, it's just check out the Podcast Accelerator, and I could be here forever talking podcasting.
How many episodes do you have on that one? Do you know?
On the Accelerator, I think it's about 280, 290. I'll have a quick look actually. Just give me a sec. It's about 280 or 290. I forget how much it is, but that's it used to be a couple of times a week. In fact, it started out 3 times a week, and now it's 1 a week. So we're on 297 was the last one.
That's impressive. You should celebrate when you hit 300. But
I've hit 300 like 10 times. Like I'm just that habitual podcaster. I've done like the 7-minute mentor at about 700. My old interview show had about 250, maybe a little bit less. The Spark of Rebellion, which is the Star Wars one, has got we're on about 130 for that one. So it's I don't know. I'm just get addicted to podcasting.
I felt like I really arrived when I hit 40, because I'm 43. I hit 43 episodes, and then I was like, I should tell people, I should celebrate. I should tell my my friends and family that I have a podcast that they probably forgot that I was starting, a year ago. And then I was like, nah, that doesn't really feel like very many. So I hit 50 and I still didn't really say anything. So I do need to work more on I think I want people to find my podcast organically. And like the people who I interview obviously are, putting up the word as well. And so their audiences are finding about it. But I think I still feel a little hesitancy sometimes about being like, by the way, I'm a podcaster. I don't want it to sound like presumptuous or anything, or I don't know. I've hit 70 episodes. I think you're going to be episode 71. Sorry if I'm wrong on that, but I feel like that's something to be said. It's like, pod fade. Like, what number do people usually quit?
Oh, they're at like 7. Like most people quit at 7,
Okay, so when I hit 70, I should be like, this is a good start.
Just a little bit. I think you're like 10x in front of most people. Yeah, most people quit at like 7 or 8. Like if it's not for them, they understand pretty quickly because it's difficult to keep on top of, And
then the metrics. I have to not be disappointed, by my numbers, but it is interesting to see, people are finding it, and hopefully we'll tell a friend. But I have to remind them to tell a friend. So, hey, if you're listening to this, tell a friend. I do want to get into your home office setup a little bit. You talked about some of your podcasting equipment. How many people are in your household? Are you working with dogs or anything else like that right now?
Oh, yeah, I've got a dog, Norman, that's just about to probably bark, actually. He's looking out the window. I can see him now. I've just asked Sam to come and get him. Bless him. He's only a little puppy. He's like 7 months, 8 months old, but he's all right. So yeah, we got Norm and we got Molly, who's the other dog. But Molly works with Sam, and Norman works for me, so he's always under my table. Bless him. Yeah, there's Sam and I. We're fortunate enough. We've got a house where we can both have an office, which is kind of nice. And then we've got our first kiddo on the way at the minute, which is she's gonna be around in maybe February time. So, maybe some podcasts with crying in the background.
Congrats.
Thank you very much. So, I mean, it's a fairly. The house is reasonably set up. It's why we chose the house because, like my own kind of space. It's a fairly big room where I've kind of got my own room and I've got all my video set up. I've got my podcast set up. I've got like my guitars and, I'm lucky enough I can, play a bit of Xbox up here. I've got a TV and that up here. So it's like a little apartment that's kind of tacked on. The previous owners, I think they ran a business out of it. So they put this like extension above the garage, which is almost pretty self-contained. And then
do you have like a kitchenette or anything in there?
Yeah. There's like a utility that comes off the garage, which has got a sink. In fact, ironically, we're living at that at the minute. We're just renovating and remodeling the kitchen. So we're actually living out of the little kind of kitchenette utility room at the minute, which is kind of fortunate that we can do that.
What a coincidence that you had that. Yeah, awesome.
It is pretty handy. And then Sam's got her office kind of in the other, kind of, behind the wall from me. And she's got a nice little office space. Everything's set up well. And it's just, we're lucky to have that ability, and working in tech and in podcasting. We had all the gear, I had a camera that was good. And because, we needed it for content. That's what we do. I needed the microphones. I've had them for years. The Rodecaster, I had that for years. We were fortunate that when lockdown hit, it was just like, right, all right, let's just get everything and that's fine. We've got everything we need.
I feel like I've also received emails from Sam. So Sam works with you.
Oh yeah, Sam's our head of sport and experience. Yeah, you will have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you ever work side by side, or are you usually in separate offices?
Usually in separate offices. Yeah, she does a very different role to me. She's working as a head of customer support and experience, and I'm generally kind of, because running the business, it requires me to do lots of different stuff. Mm-hmm. And so it can be quite distracting because I'm always flitting them, in between different things, which is never easy. So yeah, we rarely work together, but we obviously have sessions together where we'll plan stuff and so on, and we'll do that out in wherever, in the garden or in the kitchen. Well, not the kitchen right now, but we'll spend a bit of time just planning stuff.
I've talked with several couples actually, or someone who works with their spouse on the same business, but they're like, yeah, we have separate offices and separate floors of the house. This has happened more than once, and they feel like that helps. With their relationship and their work and, just different styles and like speaking, and, one person's on the phone, the other person's trying to concentrate. I don't know if this is going to be too personal, but like, do you have another room in your home that you're going to have, like when the baby comes? Are you going to have to give up an office, or are you guys set?
Oh no, we're all good. Yeah. Like you said, we're fortunate to have a place that we've got like a little kind of playroom for the kid, and we've got, she's got her own bedroom and stuff. So we chose the house when we moved with all of this in mind. We're fortunate enough to have plenty of bedrooms and the office space, and we've got a living room and a space that's completely separate to everything else that we can live in and so on. And we've got a spare room for the grandparents and stuff, which is nice. Awesome. So yeah, it's a pretty well structured house for that reason, and we chose it for that reason. We knew that we'd be working together. We knew, because we moved during lockdown, so we chose it with yeah, it was fun. we chose it with all that in mind, which is good.
Knowing that you might eventually give up your brick and mortar office, so.
Maybe not so much that, but knowing that I'll probably, certainly, I think Sam and I will both always do something, whether it's Captivate, whether it's something else, who knows? Like, I can't ever see me retiring. I'll always be tinkering with something. If I'm not working something, I'll be working on something. I'll either be studying something or whatever. So I think, it's important to have a space where, and even like for kiddo, she can come and she can work, and she can have a desk and she can do her homework and wherever she needs it. So it was more just setting up a family home more than anything. It just so happens that, the place that we found, someone had decided to stick sort of a bit of an office on above the garage, which is Very,
Nice.
very
Very
fortunate.
nice.
Yeah.
What a lucky find, really. Especially, I don't know if the UK is experiencing the same housing weirdness that we have right now. I live in Arizona and Phoenix,
Hmm.
Arizona area.
Oh, yeah.
Housing is just like crazy right now. And people are, paying tens of $1,000s above asking price and more, just ridiculous arrangements. And so, yeah, it's a tricky time to be buying a house. So it sounds like you got settled in and at a good time.
Well, it was very, very, very tumultuous getting the house sorted. Being a business owner is always fun when you're getting things like that. And I think we sort of moved just as the house prices started to go crazy.
Okay,
We could have sold our previous house for 25-30% more than what we sold it for. It was,
if you just had waited a few more months.
I know. Well, but then the house that we'd have got now would have been 20-30% more expensive. So, we've done the maths on it, and we would have probably lost out. Even though on paper it looks like, I could have got more selling that one. We wouldn't have got anything. And I know people that are having that problem as well. They look at the sale and they're thinking, well, okay.
But where am I going to go?
That's it. Yeah. And a lot of them are buying, they'll do like doer-uppers where you've got to spend the money that you get, you've got to reinvest back in it anyway to make it decent and livable. So it's sort of not worth it, in my view, especially when you're growing a business. The last thing you want to be doing is, we have renovated a heck of a lot of the house. We've changed every single door in the building. We've decorated every single room. We've changed, it's got 2 bathrooms. So we've changed both of those. We've got the kitchen that we're just remodeling, and that was on a house that didn't need anything, so what would you do if the amount of stuff that you would, just because you live in it, the amount of stuff that you see and think, I kind of want to change that, so it's
living in a construction zone is no picnic. Were you doing some of the work yourself too?
A little bit of it and some of the major stuff, like we put some more doors in, we cut a wall and put a door in and stuff, so obviously things like that we can't do. But we did some of the stuff, some of the electrical work, and Sam's dad's a plumber and so on. So he kind of advised on how we might do some of that stuff and helped out where he could. But certainly not all of it.
So I have a question talking about living in a house with dogs, and we have a cat. Actually, my cat has been probably trying to get into my next room here is the bathroom, because we have company visiting from out of state. And we moved the cat box up into our bathroom so that the downstairs would smell a little bit more pleasant when we had our company. But so now she's kind of in my face, and she keeps trying to come into my closet by pawing at the door. Do you, as a podcaster, do you cut out those extra sounds? Like when you said you might hear some noise, do you actually go through and carefully edit all of that out, or do you just let it roll?
It depends what it is. I just let it roll usually. Like the dog did a good old barking session on one of my last episodes. I was like, well, you all know I've got a dog. That's Norman. Sorry about that. I think it depends on the vibe. Like you said, you wouldn't get that with a scripted podcast or with something from Wondery or and I understand that it's not right for everyone to be able to do that. But my style and my content has always been very straight talking, very, very focused on just kind of cutting through the BS a little bit. And my job is to empower people to podcast and to make them feel comfortable podcasting. So if someone has not got a perfectly sound environment, I'd rather they still podcasted and just went, I've not got a perfectly sound environment, rather than someone else going, you can't which people do, you can't podcast unless you've got perfect sound. And I just think, well, that's stupid. So I'd rather you started and your sound wasn't great, but it got you to a place where your sound was great. So if my dog barks, if I was to edit it, I'd almost be doing myself a disservice, because I'd be, if one of our customers at Captivate or someone that asks for advice comes to me and says, look, Mark, I want to podcast, but I'm worried that the trash lorry or the traffic outside is going to sound too loud. I'm like, well, my job is to empower them to get started and just, make account for it and revisit it whenever you can. It's to empower people to do it. So I think that's why I take that approach.
I know I originally, and I'm looking up here, I've got a big bag full of the foam that you can use for, reducing echo or whatever like that. But I thought when I bought it originally, which is why I never used it, that it would like actually prevent sounds from the outside rooms from leaking into this room. And the guy at the store was like, you can buy it, but it's probably not going to like hide the noises of your kids, because it's just more of like a sound quality thing, not so much a sound buffer. And he said, if you need to, hang blankets on your doors, stuff a towel under your door. That's probably where the sounds are coming through. And I ended up just kind of on purpose leaving my office kind of stuffed with some stuff. I have some shelves that hold like sweaters and, shirts that I wear for my different jobs and, just office supplies. And I figured just having enough stuff and a little furniture and a carpet on the ground is probably enough. And I think it has more or less worked out that way. Usually the sounds that I hear are coming from my guests, and I want to keep it approachable. Like a lot of my guests are first time podcast guests. They've never been on a podcast before. And I don't want to be like, oh, are you in a, I do ask, are you wearing a headset by any chance to help reduce echo of my voice coming through your microphone? But a lot of them don't. And for the most part, honestly, I switched recently from using Riverside FM to just Zoom. I know the picture quality isn't as great right now. But it seems like it's a little bit more forgiving and I know Zoom isn't a really great platform for podcasting. You probably have way better access to things, but as far as like cost, my podcast isn't monetized right now. So Zoom is affordable and it seems like it's pretty forgiving. I usually can tell if there's going to be tech issues right in the, middle of it, versus Riverside. When I was using them, I would, finish recording and then we'd realize, oh, there was like something really big that went on that was like sync problem or something like that, or a big echo that we really had to spend a lot of time reducing. What do you use?
Well, I don't use anything at the minute because I'm solo. But I always use Squadcast.
You record into?
I just record either into my Rodecaster, which is, that's what is controlling my audio right now. It's my interface. It's why I can do the sounds, and I've got you coming through there. And that's just onto an SD card. I can always, I also either do that or I record through that, but into Audition, depending. The Rodecaster's been performing a bit weirdly recently. But if I'm ever doing remote stuff, I'll do one of two things. I will either use I'll use either Zencaster, Lev Ross and the team there. Riverside, obviously, I would use that one, and I have used that one, and I'm fortunate to know these guys from integrations with like Abel and that, and then the other one, of course, is Squadcast. So we integrated very recently with Zach and Rock and the guys there that we've known for a long time. So I would use one of those. I would use one of those. There's nothing wrong with Zoom. You can enable. Both sides of the conversation to be recorded separately. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's just, and if you're worried about the mic and the noise, turn the mic down and get closer on it. I could turn mine up. I'll be louder now, and I could move away. Or I can turn it down and really get on top of it, and you can hear the difference. So it's the rooms are usually all right as long as there's nothing crazy. Like I can, if I bang on the desk, you're gonna hear it. Mm-hmm. But it's not like that. So it's I think it's just about understanding how these things work, how the mic works. Like in your example, if you were worried about it, just turn the mic down and get within 2 inch or 3 inch of the mic. That's it.
So sit closer. Okay.
Yeah, because it will be, the signal that it's expecting is far lower in volume. So you almost act like your own noise gate. So things from further away just simply won't get in, because it's not got enough power to drag it in, but if your voice is really close to it, you're still going to sound brilliant, So just little hacks like that you can start to play with.
Do you feel that podcasting is a way that entrepreneurs can, this is kind of a silly question. I think I already know the answer, but like, why do you suggest that people do podcasting? You said, I would rather encourage someone to get started rather than wait until it's perfect. So entrepreneurs obviously are always trying to market themselves. Do you feel like this is a way to really build an audience, or is it an extra time suck?
I think it's like anything, it's a time suck if you don't do it right. And if you think it's going to be something that you can do quickly, then it's not going to work for you. It's entrepreneurs are funny, and it depends what kind of entrepreneur you mean. Like, do you mean a genuine entrepreneur or someone that says they're an entrepreneur but doesn't make any money yet? Like, that is a big difference. Now, the reason that I'm saying that is because there's so many gurus out there, and they are 99% rubbish. And the reason that they're 99% rubbish is because their money comes from telling you that they're a guru.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, all right, show me all the other stuff that you've done. Like, if you've started a business and then you teach someone to start businesses, you're a small business owner that has gone into coaching. You're not an entrepreneur. If you've started one business and you've either sold it or exited it, or you've put it on autopilot and it runs and makes its own money and profit, then you did it again, then you did it again, then you did it again, then you're an entrepreneur. Like, I'm not an entrepreneur. I run a software company. I'm not an entrepreneur. So is it a time suck? Well, it depends. Like, is marketing a time suck? Is invoicing a time suck? Like, is blogging, is YouTube, is networking, is talking to clients, is sales, is follow-up, is retention? Are they all time sucks? Well, they are if you do them inefficiently and if you do them ineffectively. And podcasting is the same thing. A lot of people I don't know who's told people this, but a lot of people tell people, get into podcasting because you can build an audience really quickly and sell your products and stuff. Well, I do actually know who's been telling people this, but it's crazy. It is crazy. It's not. It doesn't happen like that. Like, you can't do it like that. It's like YouTube. If you put a YouTube video up every week and don't do anything else, what do you think will happen? Nothing. If you put a YouTube video up and then for the other 4 days of the week, your goal is to build a YouTube channel, and you do collaboration, you do marketing, you do research, you do keyword analysis, you do title analysis, you do split testing, you split test your thumbnails, then you will build a YouTube business. So there's a difference between I podcast and I'm a podcaster. Just there's a difference between I golf and I'm a golfer. And there's a difference between I sing and I'm a singer. They're very, very different. So I think it's a common fallacy that entrepreneurs and anyone can just start a podcast and build an audience. Is it a time suck? If you do it badly, yes. If you do it well, no. If you're not going to really focus on it, like, I know so many people that want to automate and they'll go, well, I'm just going to turn my YouTube show into a podcast. Cool. That's not going to work. Like, why would it work? It's impossible almost for it to work. Now, sure, YouTube's getting into podcasting a little bit, and so on, but you've got to really think about the medium. If which one of these sounds better? All right, I'm going to do you two examples. One of them's for YouTube. One of them is for a podcast. All right, here we go. I'm going to do the first one. I'm going to play the music. All right, here we go. In this video, you're going to learn 3 ways to build your podcast in just 5 minutes per day. All right, that's example number 1. Okay, example number 2. Welcome to the Podcast Accelerator. This is Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder of Captivate.fm. And in this podcast, you can learn everything about how to start, build, and monetize your podcast audience. And I'm going to give a shout out to my sponsor, Aweber, blah, blah, blah. Right? The first one, you can't really get away with as a podcaster. Sorry, that's the bit that you want to be using. Sorry, the last one you can't get away with as a podcaster, because you lose me. All right? I tell you about me. I pitch me. And I lose the listener instantly, because it's not about
the second example.
With the second example, because what's in it for me? I'm driving. All right, I've got 10 seconds to find a new podcast between the lights changing.
Right.
I'm out, or I'm walking. I'm just about to set off on a run. On YouTube, you can sort of get away with that. And I know people like Nick Nimmin would teach this far better, but in YouTube, you can get away with it. Why can you get away with it? 2 reasons. 1, you can keep me engaged with jump cuts and moving. I can move around. I can put things on screen to keep you engaged, because my voice is not the only thing that needs to engage you. The second reason that you can do that on YouTube and you can get away with it a little bit more is because people are watching. So they are physically engaged with you right there and then. The first example, which I'll do again for you. Can you grow your podcast in just 5 minutes a day? Well, I believe you can, and I'm going to teach you 3 ways that you can do that. And all you need to do is listen for 7 minutes. I'm going to talk to you about Instagram, the biggest problem people find there, how you can leverage Twitter, and why LinkedIn is your best friend. My name is Mark Asquith. This is a Podcast Accelerator. Now, you know what you're getting on that example, and it's only a subtle shift. So what happens is people try and repurpose. So they'll do a YouTube version and they'll do everything the same. Then they'll take the audio and they'll, entrepreneurs will take the audio and they'll stick it on podcast, and they'll wonder, why is one of my channels not growing? And it'll either be YouTube that's not growing or it'll be the podcast that's not growing. No, both of them won't grow. Okay. And the reason for that is that you're not catering to the audience. You are literally not catering to the relevant audience. What you're doing is making yourself feel better by ticking two boxes.
You're speaking to me, because I take this podcast and I throw it on YouTube because I already have the video. Why not? Well,
that's the exact thing that people do. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, YouTube is moving into podcasting. And a lot of people do say that they listen to podcasts on YouTube. They're working on a more passive version of YouTube, and they're recruiting in the podcasting department at YouTube as we speak. And there's nothing wrong with putting it on there, but let's be really clear. It's probably not going to grow.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. All right. Where do you put your focus? Do you split your focus? Now, what might be better is YouTube has also got different requirements in terms of user base and audience expectation for when it comes to jump cuts. So maybe actually you're doing an abridged version with, whatever jump cuts in there and a nice intro and so on. But the podcast, that's catering to the runners, to the walkers, to the, me when I'm cleaning my house or when I'm changing my car. I'm like, okay, is this podcast for me? I need to know very, very quickly, because if not, these lights are going to change and I need to start driving again. So this is the problem that entrepreneurs face, is that it has been perpetuated over the last few years that creating one piece of content, you can reuse it. And a lot of people mistake repurposing for simply reusing and republishing. True repurposing is taking elements and creating other content based on the elements. So yeah, the entrepreneur thing's a funny one. It's not a waste of time if you do it well and if you focus on it, just like anything,
Can you talk a little bit really quick? I know you're going to be running off to your next meeting here in a few. What sets Captivate apart? I know why I chose Captivate, but that was a year and a half ago that I was doing that research. So in this modern world where people maybe have, only known the podcasting hosting services from, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, what is special about Captivate that people might consider switching or starting one with you?
Well, first off, I think you're going to get that kind of answer that I just gave you about why entrepreneurs may or may not want a podcast, because no one really, in my view, is going to tell you that stuff. It's not my job to just get your RSS feed and take $5-10 a month from you. It's my job for you to actually succeed. So that's the first thing. But you know what it's like, April. We're always releasing new features. We released the cross promo features. We've got Amy, our dynamic content modules rolling out. There's so much that we do for the independent creator, and we are, we don't have a free plan. We only have a 7-day free trial because we are really clear that the podcasters that we want to help are those that are serious independent creators that are willing to put $15, $20 a month into the one thing that they want to do, and if they can do that, if they are willing to have some skin in the game, we will give them everything that they need to be able to grow and move forward. And that's a different approach to other hosts. Many other hosts they want users. They'll do massive free plans so that eventually you end up paying them in a year's time. Like, we could do that, but what's the point? I'd rather work with the really quality people that really want to grow their podcast, because, if we can do that, we don't have to worry about, most of our users are free or whatever. We can really focus on helping you. We can do the growth labs. We can do our growth Q&A sessions. We can do all of we release features quicker than any and more frequently than any other hosting platform, quite literally, on the planet, because we can, because we're not stymied by that. Well, we need more free users. We need more, we've not got investors. We don't need any of that. All right. All we need to do is help you. And like I said, I've produced 1,200 episodes. Everything that we build is built by podcasters. Gary, who's our head of design, he designed Captivate. He was the one that got me into podcasting. Like, that shows you how much we're in podcasting. So yeah, that's probably why.
Do you feel that Captivate, since you do work with people who are, ready to dive in and commit to an actual plan, are less likely to experience that pod fade, or do you feel like it's just kind of across the board? I feel like that would be easier to do with a free plan.
Sorry. It is. Our pod fade is very, very, very good. So our activation rate, so people that go from the 7-day free trial to actually paying and being serious podcasters, is very, 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 very high. And like almost startlingly high when I'm talking to people about it. Like it's surprising because they're the right people. Mm-hmm. The second thing is Captivate was measured all of the podcast episodes across the world that were released in September. This is the most recent statistics. Bear in mind, there are hundreds of podcasters or whatever. There's a heck of a lot of them. Captivate, a 2-year-old company with no investment, we were 9th. We supplied over 2% of the world's podcast episodes in September. And bear in mind, all of the people above us, so the other 8, are all much, 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 much bigger, much, much older companies. And Captivate was ranking higher than some very, very, very large and very, very old companies. So to go from 0 to being that level shows that our podcasters keep producing.
Right. So you've got momentum right now.
And it's not even our momentum, it's your momentum. Like, we keep you going. We want to keep you going. Some of the stuff that we're producing over the next couple of months that we're releasing, it's intended to just help you. If you can save time, you can do more marketing. And if the more you market, the more you'll grow, the more you grow, the more you monetize, the more time we can save you, you'll just keep doing that. So it's a perpetual cycle. It's not, we are a byproduct of you continuing to do good work. It's not about us doing good work. If we can enable you to do good work, then everyone does well. So that's right. The ethos, that's how we approach it.
All right. Well, I know we need to wrap up. Do you have any advice for people who are either wanting to start working from home or want to start a podcast, or any other final thoughts?
I think just do what you want to do. There is no right or wrong. There's no reason to do anything other than if you want to. So just really, really do what you want to do. If you want to start a podcast, then start a podcast. If you want to start that YouTube channel, or if you want to work from home, whatever you want to do, just focus on doing it, and you'd be surprised. You more often than not, you can.
Mark, could you spell your name for us? And then you're at Captivate FM.
Yes, Captivate.fm, and surname Asquith, Asquith.
Got it. And any other places you want people to find you, or start at the website?
Oh, just Twitter's probably the quickest one. Just at Mr. Asquith on Twitter. It's where I do most of my engagement and my chatting, so that's probably the best.
All right. Well, thank you. This has been Mark Asquith with April Malone, and this has been Yesterday Work From Home. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.